he is super aggressive. And, like, because of that, they hit a lot of teams in the mouth. But you can't become an emotional play caller. Like, you have to stay within yourself and say, okay, he got me. You know, maybe he gets this drive, but we can get him in the long term because he's so aggressive. And to me, that's the perfect encapsulation of how you beat this defense. Like,
fresh out of the Commanders locker room, Sam Fortier joins us. Of course, the Commanders beat reporter for the Washington Post. You can follow him on Instagram and TikTok for some great digital content as well. Sammy, what'd you find in did you guys go a second time into the locker room today? What was that all about?
Yeah, they had a short first availability because of a meeting, and so the second time we went down, we talked to Zach Ertz and Nick Allegretti. And who else? I'm walking out of the facility right now with Benjamin Standing, who is also congested. Ben, am I missing anybody? He said no. I think it was just Zach and Nick.
Okay, well, I mean, those are two good guys to talk to. Allegretti is one of the great guys to talk to in that locker room. And with all due respect to whatever you got from those guys, the thing that people want to know, Sam Fortier, from you, sir, is what the heck is going on with Bobby Wagner's ankle? How serious is this injury, and how nervous are we about not just him being able to play? Like, he's going to play, but at what level can he play on Saturday night?
It's a great question. It's one that we did not anticipate when we talked to Dan Quinn on Tuesday. Bobby has not talked to us in the locker room. He's planning to do it tomorrow. We initially were going to get him in the second locker room open today, but he decided, hey, let's talk tomorrow. Like you said, I don't anticipate him missing this game, but how much does it affect him? I don't know. We don't really get to see them do much more than stretch when we're in there for practice at this point in the season. And so I think it's a fair question to say, hey, with an interior run game that is as good as the Lions is, with the weakness that it's been for the Commanders all season, like, how big of a deal is this? I think it's potentially a big deal.
It's potentially a huge deal. I mean, he is such a big part of what they do against the run, his physicality, not to mention his leadership, and if there's anything clouding his mind of, like, can I make it to my gap because this ankle hurts? Like, does he miss something else? Like, that's just the reality of a human being dealing with pain. In terms of how they deal with this run game, both Montgomery's back, first of all. Like, he missed the end of the season, but he's back for Detroit. Gibbs is both top 6 in the NFL in success rate and EPA per play, so he's always good and often explosive. How do you think they go about corralling it based off what you've been able to gather, asking folks about it, and what you've studied on your own on tape?
Yeah, I think that you have to – I don't know exactly what they do schematically, but you have to be better on the interior. If you look at it, Detroit is, I think, top 3 in EPA success rate and yards per carry in terms of between the tackles, what they're able to do. And so, I mean, you obviously need excellent games from Daron Payne, and John Allen and Johnny Newton. You need all those interior guys to step up. And so I think that it's a huge deal because we've seen Ben Johnson, and Joe Whitt talked about this today, they test your discipline. They're going to find the weak point, and they're going to hit it. And, if you look back against, at Detroit's games against poor interior run defenses like Tennessee earlier in the year, I know they got better as time went on, but, like, I think they had 120 yards just between the tackles in that game because, Montgomery and Gibbs, Sonic Knuckles, like they're really tough to bring down. And I think that Ben Johnson is extremely good at finding your weakness and exploiting it.
Sam Fortier is with us from the Washington Post. If that's not a hard enough day at the office for the Commanders defense, they also have to deal with Jamison Williams, probably the fastest receiver in the NFL, on the outside, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had 1,500 yards last year on the other. So, and by the way, also Sam Laporta. Like, there's just an endless amount of weapons on this Detroit side. Is the running game the thing that scares you most, or are you more like, I don't know, like the running game is going to be what it's going to be, but if they hit some explosives, like that's the thing that buries the Commanders?
Yeah, I think the answer is all of it. Like, their ability to beat you anyway, like they've been in ball control, grinded out physical games, and they've also been in shootouts. Like, they're capable of doing anything. I think Jared Goff, when you watch on tape, like he's just so good at managing those things. And, when he drops back and then off play action throws a dig route over the middle, you're like, oh, like he just is very good at managing and kind of being the coach on the field for Ben Johnson. And so for me, I would worry more about the run game just because it's the Commanders' Achilles heel so far this season, and also like the best way to beat the Commanders is keep Jaden off the field and don't let him come onto the field where you're down one score or it's tied at the end of the game. And so I think that is what makes you nervous, because if you think back to the Dallas game, Craig, like they were very successful, 3rd and short, 4th and short, like running it up the middle. That was not a problem, and I don't think the Commanders have shown that they are able to stop it yet.
No, definitely not. And of course, you could say the same in reverse for Washington's offense. The best way to stop the Detroit offense is to keep them off the field. And now we get to the point, Sam, where we acknowledge that you really unlocked the soundbite of the season. When you asked Kliff a couple weeks ago, can you win without running the football? And he was like, I don't want to, but yeah. And then they go out and do it in a playoff game. What did you make of his answer, though, today about why he kept running it even though the run game wasn't working against Tampa, and what that meant to their overall success?
Yeah, I mean, he basically said because Dan Quinn is a defensive coach, I've learned from him that sometimes you just have to stick with the run game because it's a mentality thing. It keeps them honest, and it's particularly late in the fourth quarter, it burned clock. Like, I think that is a thing that people underestimate the importance of. And so to me, what I made of his answer was he knows that he has to be balanced, and that doesn't mean it has to be 50-50 all the time, but it means that you have to test the defense in both ways. And I think, the Lions defense, especially because they're banged up, I think there are going to be opportunities. Well, theoretically, there would be opportunities to run the ball. I don't know if the Commanders can capitalize on that, but I think that you're likelier to get them in the run game than you are in the pass game, even though they've allowed some explosives, just because they play so aggressively.
Right. So let's zoom out for a second on that concept before we zoom back into this game, because you're someone who's written about the analytics revolution in football. Like you're very well versed in these things and know a lot of the people around the league who are implementing analytics and this kind of thing. And there's kind of this, I would say, media analytics community, some of which live on a very extreme of basically you should never run the football because the EPA per play is higher for passing than it is for rushing. And then you have all these coaches that are like, I don't know, my entire life, teams that run the football well win. And now we've seen that balanced kind of approach work this season. You see someone like Kliff who's like, yeah, in my past, I probably would have just aired it out, but I understand the value of running the football. How is watching this offense this season shaped your perspective on offense when it comes to running the football and the value of it?
I think it depends almost entirely on your quarterback, because we saw Eric Bieniemy last year run a theoretically good offense if you're just looking at, the data in terms of how aggressive you should be in play calling and passes. And that works with Patrick Mahomes. It does not work with Sam Howell. And guess what? It does work with Jaden Daniels, because over the last 4 full games he's played in, he's had at least 40 dropbacks, at least 10 runs. What he can do as a scrambler, makes up for a lot of things, not only in the run game, but just in play calling for Kliff Kingsbury. And so I believe offensive linemen, Mitchell Schwartz on Twitter, I think, is a really good one. He used to play offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's like, look, momentum and the value of running the ball doesn't show up in the data, but I felt it. I felt it on the field, and you can't tell me that's not real. And I totally buy that. And so I think that it just depends. What is the best way for you to win? Because I promise you, Andrew Wiley, Nick Allegretti, Mitchell Schwartz, guys that play with Patrick Mahomes, they don't mind pass blocking 65% of the time if you're going to the Super Bowl. It's just when you do that and you suck, that's a problem.
Right. And then I think there's also the downside limitation of it. And I think that's been the magical thing about, especially last week, to drop back 40 times as a rookie in a playoff game and have no turnovers is an all-time type of performance. And Jaden specifically's lack of turning the football over makes the formula work, because running the football, yes, you can fumble, but the likelihood of fumbling versus the likelihood of throwing an interception, it's probably less than half, if not even more severe in terms of risk aversion. And so I think the other thing that's an element here is the impact of big explosive plays that are positive. And then even if you want to look at last week, the impact of a turnover, I'm sure it's somewhere dispersed through the data, but it's almost hard to capture how calamitous it can be, especially if it's in the area of the field that Tampa turned it over with Baker missing the jet sweep to McMillan on Sunday night.
There's a meme on Twitter that I don't know if I'll do a good job explaining on the radio, and if I don't, please let me know. But, like, it's like a bell curve of, like, how well you know ball. And it's like the dumbest person and the smartest person are saying, like, oh, like, the good player, like, give the ball to your good players. And then,
it's just like a circle.
It's like the smart person, no, like, give the ball to your best player the most amount of times, and, like, Jaden has proven he will not turn the ball over. So, like, giving him 40, we haven't seen 50 yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did this weekend because of how the Lions play defense, and I want to talk about that more. But, like, if Kliff Kingsbury said, hey, our best chance to win this game, if we can't get the run game going, which we probably won't because we haven't for weeks, is, like, dropping Jaden back 50 times and being like, go win, I'd be like, yeah, that's a totally defensible, if not, like, encouraging strategy.
I don't disagree. Sam Fortier with us here on the Hoffman Show, guiding his own interview right back where I was going to take it anyway. So good work on that. You're doing TikToks, you're doing Instagram Reels, you're doing YouTube Shorts. Next thing you know, you'll be hosting a radio show. Just warning, Sam, it's a lot longer. The radio show's much longer than 60 seconds. I know you can do longer on some of those platforms now, but we're here for 3 hours every day, so you settle down over there. Let's zoom back in on that aspect of it, though. With the Lions defense, they play a ton of man coverage, and there's part of me that's like, fantastic. You're not going to have eyes on Jaden. He's going to run all over the place. Terry McLaurin could have a field day. There's part of me that goes, okay, well, they did a pretty good job on Justin Jefferson a couple weeks ago, and who else for the Commanders is going to be able to beat man-to-man coverage? Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum, or is there another aspect of Detroit's defense that you actually even find more interesting than that?
It's a good question. Basically, when I watch Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, I'm like, this dude wants to beat me up. He plays man coverage at the highest rate in the league. He blitzes at the third highest rate in the league. He plays base defense with that third linebacker at the highest rate in the league. His defense is the second most penalized in the league. Like he is super aggressive. And, like, because of that, like, they hit a lot of teams in the mouth. But because they take so many risks, they also get burned. They've allowed the fourth highest rate of explosive plays, particularly in the pass game. And so to me, it's just like, Kliff, I think, had an awesome answer that you should play if you haven't already today, where he was like, Aaron Glenn, like, is good. He's going to get you. He's going to get you for sure. You're going to take a negative play. You're going to have a big negative, but you can't become an emotional play caller. Like, you have to stay within yourself and say, okay, he got me. Maybe he gets this drive, but we can get him in the long term because he's so aggressive. And to me, that's the perfect encapsulation of how you beat this defense. Like, yes, I think the specific matchups are really important. Terry, no matter which corner he goes up against, I think he's going to have chances to win man coverage. We talked to him about that today. But to me, it's about Kliff sticking to his plan because Aaron Glenn is going to get you, but can you get him back?
Right, and we will play that coming up in our Pick 6 at 6 at, 6 o'clock. So, again, Sam just driving the ship in the direction it was already going, so continuing to do a great job on that. But I think that the kind of the follow-up, and this is a second layer question, if you will, off of that is, if there are opportunities to take shots with frequency, because that's how they play, do you take them all? Because normally explosives is what you want. Like, you live in the NFL to try to get big explosive plays down the field. The percents are so dramatically shifted if you have a 15-plus play or 15-plus yard pass or a 10-plus yard run on any given drive of scoring a touchdown. But they have to have the clock management part of this game as well. So how do you think Kliff approaches that dial, and how does Jaden approach that aggressiveness dial?
I think you have to take your shots early because they're going to be aggressive, and I know that if those shots don't hit, that could lead Detroit's offense to get ahead. And if they get up 2 scores, I think that's going to be really difficult because of what we talked about, their strength running the ball, the Commanders' inability to stop the run. It could get out of hand in a hurry. But if you're 8.5-point underdogs, I think you have to take your shots to go into a really difficult place to play and pull off an upset against the Super Bowl favorites. And, Craig, to me, that's why the X factor in this game for the Commanders is De'Ami Brown. Because the Commanders don't have another deep threat. I know OZ. I know Jamison Crowder. Those guys have had moments. But De'Ami Brown is the guy who can win deep, who can beat man-to-man coverage, stack guys, and make plays down the field. He's just done it really inconsistently throughout his entire career. He had, I think, one of the best games of his career last week. And my question is, can he sustain it? Because he has a huge opportunity to change this game because the Detroit Lions are going to try to take away Terry. But if he can step up and make them focus on him, that changes the Commanders' entire offense, in my opinion.
No, that's been true since the moment Noah Brown went out. Like, with the one game they didn't have De'Ami was probably their worst offensive performance since Noah went out, because it was literally just Terry or nothing, because you can cover all those other guys underneath. Like, Jameson's a good zone player or even a good man beater on like quick slants, quick outs, anything that happens now. But he's a 4-6 guy. Corners are going to catch up. OZ, same kind of player, more of a quickness power player, not someone with long speed. And De'Ami has that. So I think the other part about what you just said, Sam, that kind of goes to something you said earlier is, what's the fear if you are down in a game? It's that, we're going to have to drop our quarterback back all of a sudden and throw it 50 times. You just said 3 minutes ago that might be the strategy anyway. So the idea of taking risk early to fall into the same game plan you might have anyway, my question on that would be, like, would Dan Quinn, the defensive head coach, go for that? Or is he like, no, that's not how we're going to do things? Because I think for Kliff, there's probably a part of him that's looking at the tape going, I don't know, could be fun.
I think that Dan Quinn, like his fourth down aggressiveness, is probably going to have to embrace a level of aggression that might have made him feel a little queasy in his first stop in Atlanta, right? Because, like we've talked about, you cannot win running the ball, taking the points, blocking the storylines. I think a perfect example of that is, Craig, you might have remembered this from early December, but the Lions were in a tie game. They were on the Green Bay 21 with about 46 seconds left.
Yep.
And they didn't take a short field goal to take the lead and to give the Packers the ball back. They went for it, which was like, I was watching the game and I was like, this is insane. Like I think every football coach in America would probably say, take the points, get the 3-point lead, and then trust your defense. But Dan Campbell said, no, we're that aggressive. We're going to go for it, run the clock out, then kick the field goal. And it worked. And I asked Dan Quinn about it, whenever we talked to him next, if he saw that, when he thought of it. And he was like, look, man, like, they have a level of aggressiveness that they've committed to, and it worked out for him. It was a good call. And so to me, I think that Dan Quinn understands exactly what he's getting into, and so he's going to have to throttle up.
No, I think the other part of that is something that Quinn has realized over the last month, too, that he might be a defensive head coach, but this is an offensive football team. He can want to be a defensive football team, and maybe over time they become a little bit more balanced. But Dan Campbell plays like his offense is the better unit, and specifically in that game, that was like at the absolute peak of the Lions' injuries, and I think they had even lost some guys on that night, so they were as thin as they could possibly be. They didn't have a chance to bring in replacements yet, and so he's like, my defense isn't my defense. I'm just going to win the game with my offense because they're the best unit maybe in all of football. And so I think Quinn has adopted that. He realizes that he's got the best player on the field in Jaden Daniels, and he's played the last month like he has the best player on the field, and nowhere is that more true than going for it 5 times, including, by the way, twice on the first 2 drives when he didn't get it the first time against Tampa. That was the thing that I was like, here is the Dan Quinn test. Here is how far on the Dan Campbell meter have you gone? And he answered the bell, Sam. He went for it again, even though he missed it the first time.
Craig, I want to share something with you that I'm using in a feature probably on Friday, so just a little sneak peek. But I'm writing a story about Jaden's composure and just how poised he is. Like, that's the word that I feel like people are associating with him so much, right? It's not just the talent. It's that, like, when the field goal goes in, he doesn't even really react. And after they missed that first 4th down, Sam Hartman, the practice squad quarterback who's been training with Jaden since, before the draft in California, and they're close friends, he told me Jaden walked by him on the sideline and winked. That is the level of confidence that we are talking about with Jaden Daniels. And if I saw that as a coach, I'd be like, yeah, run that guy out there and give him the ball as much as you want.
That's awesome. I can't wait to read that story. You all can read it as well when Sam hits that magic publish button on Friday. Well, his editors, but you get the point. On Friday in the Washington Post at WashingtonPost.com/sports. Also, make sure you're following along. Just search for Sam Fortier on TikTok, on Instagram, all the great digital content he's producing, including updates from the facility each and every day. Sam, always appreciate your time here on the radio, sir. And anytime you want to try filling in for me, let me know since you're already halfway there.
Thanks for having me, Craig. And I don't know what the math is on that, but I think that like a radio show is like
it's a lot of TikToks,
180, bro. A lot of TikToks. I'm not a math guy, so
yeah, no, I'm not either.
I appreciate how hard it is, and I think I'm good for now.
Okay. If you change your mind, you have the direct. You got the bare bones right. We can help you with some of the lengthening out for the. And plus, hey, I don't have to deal with an editor. The words come out of my mouth and bang, there they are, for better or for worse. Safe travels, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.